Okay, so my dear friends, this is Science of Promises, and whenever I give something knowledge, I definitely give the reference of which master it belongs to, who wrote it, and which book it is from. So that is a must for every master to give that credit to the person who has written it. So we need to, if it is coming from our experience, our knowledge, then you need not give credit. But if you are taking something from some book, from somebody, you have to give the reference. You have to give the credit to that particular author, and that is the respect that we show to the knowledge, to the wisdom that we gain from somebody. So the Science of Promises is accepted from Leadership Series Volume 2, my dear friends, written by Tolkien Senadiran, a great master who has written many books on many different topics. So thanks to him that we have got this subject now. So, right. So going ahead with the Science of Promises, and we say that a promise is very sacred. And an Indian sage, if I have to say, there's no need for names over here. It's just the subject which is important. A sage had formulated a saying which emphasizes the importance of a promise. It says, one would rather die than to make a promise, but if he promises, he must fulfill his promise to his death. That is how a word is important. It matters. And that is how we need to be very, very careful before we give out a word to anyone. In Hindi, we say, Pran jaye, par vachan na jaye. And it is very, very deep and meaningful, isn't it, my dear friends? We listen to this most of the times, but we don't heed to those words. That's the thing. And then, now let's understand how a promise affects us and what is a promise. Our promises cause certain patterns, my dear friends, and in relation to that dying. So whenever we make a promise, we have this electrical pattern in our mind, which go according to the laws of nature, the laws of karma, as long as we are fulfilling those promises. The problem starts when we start breaking the promises. So the whole pattern of set activities of the physical, emotional, and mental levels and set patterns of relationship are disturbed once you start breaking them. It's easy for anyone to say, oh, I will come, oh, I will do this, oh, I will call you, oh, I will, do this. But then just imagine that, your brain is wired in such a way that it's a pattern set. It's an electrical pattern in which things are, things run in certain ways. But then through our free will, we either follow it or we try to disturb it. So what are the things that we do? So in our daily work, in our feelings, in our thoughts, in our plans, in our motives, and how are we relating to the people? How are we building the relationship with everyone? That is also very important. For example, if I say, oh, Manusha, I want to come to your house tomorrow for lunch, then I just hang up. And what does Manusha do the next day? She will bring all the vegetables. She will start cooking. She will start cutting the vegetables and she will start preparing the lunch. Just because I told her that I will come to lunch for tomorrow at your place. So then Manusha waits and waits and waits. I don't turn up. Then she'll say, then she'll call me. You said that you will come for lunch. I'm still waiting for you. Oh, I'm so sorry. I got some urgent work. I couldn't come. I'm so sorry. Just imagine. You must have been in such a position where you were disappointed by someone else's promise. So it's not about someone else now. It's about you making promises and you breaking the promises. We are not here to judge somebody else. We are not here to pinpoint somebody else. We are not here to blame somebody. We are here to understand how we need to be very, very careful with our promises. As simple as that. Because if you break the promises, these electrical patterns will be disturbed physically, emotionally, mentally. All the three ways your pattern will be disturbed. And when I'm saying science, I'm not going to show any statistics or graphs or waves or something like that. This is very, very, very important, and to understand as to why we need to be very careful with our promises. So, as I said, many physical, emotional, and mental disturbances and states of confusion are the result of broken promises. Have you ever felt in any way, in any which way in your life, that, I'll take the same example. I promise Manusha that I'll come there, but then I don't turn up. Then later, it pricks me. I promised something to her and I couldn't fulfill it. It really pricks you, doesn't it? Consciously or unconsciously, it does prick you. Because she has put in the energy of expectation from her side. So, whether it is with a friend or a mother or your husband or your children or your own promise to yourself, it doesn't matter. A promise is a promise is a promise is a promise is a promise. Small, big, it doesn't matter. A promise is a promise is a promise is a promise is a promise. As simple as that. And we do not pay attention to this, this subtle factor. It affects our health. It affects our sanity. It affects our behavior. It affects our thought forms. It affects our emotions. It affects our overall being. Because as we said, it sends an electrical pattern. It sets a pattern for all of us to, be sane. To be sane. And that is what it happens. And as it's written here, promises from others or from our own self considerably damages our health and sanity if they are not met and fulfilled. Now, I don't want you to go ahead and remember all the promises that you have made. I just want you to focus on what is being said right now. So I understand that the mind wavers here and there whenever I did that, I did this, I did not do this. Don't do that. Okay. So, childhood. Remember childhood, my dear. During your childhood, unfulfilled promises by parents, teachers, peers, society, friends, or your gurus or whatever, they have a deep effect in our system. Remember, just for this once, remember an unfulfilled promise in your childhood. Your father must have said, if you pass in your first class, I will buy you a bicycle. Or your mom says, if you do this, I'll buy you a doll. Or something like that. See, for a child, a doll is a big thing. For a child, a bicycle is a big, huge thing. So just remember a promise which you have faced, a situation which you have faced where you had an unfulfilled promise and you felt betrayed. You felt cheated by somebody in your childhood. How did that feel? Do you still carry that wound in you? Do you still carry that hurt or pain in you that my mother, my father, my teacher, somebody promised me something and then they don't fulfill it? It has an effect of 70 years in our life if we don't heal that pain of an unfulfilled promise of a betrayed feeling. And if we don't address that, we are stuck in that age as far as that particular topic is concerned, an unfulfilled promise, if we do not address that situation. And what runs for 70 years in our life? The thought forms of the promises given to us a long time ago, my dear friends. So that is how we build a prison around ourselves. And that works as a post-hypnotic suggestion. As far as an unfulfilled promise in a childhood is concerned. And that is the reason we need to be very, very careful. Now that our childhood is done, dusted, it's over. We need to be very careful as to how and why we promise to your children or to other children. We don't want other children also to face what we have faced, isn't? So that is how we need to be very careful as far as promising to children goes. It really carries a big, a spot or sore spot. So be very careful, my dear friends, to deal with children as far as promises are concerned. A child lives in America and the grandmother says, "Oh, beta, I will come this summer. Don't cry." And she doesn't turn up. The child keeps expecting the grandmother to come in summer, but she doesn't. Just for the sake of the baby not crying, we lie. We make a false promise to the child. And that the child will never forget. For you, it is just for the child to stop crying. But the child will never forget the grandmother's broken promise. That is how a deep impact is made on a child's mind, emotions, physical, everything, on every level. And it stays with them for 7 years. Do you really want that to happen to that child? No, I don't think so. So, throughout our life, whenever the promise is attached to any circumstance or event, we go through acute crisis, depressions, and failures. Because it disturbs the electrical pattern that has been set to run in a normal way, to function in a normal way. What happens? Slowly, we create crisis in our own lives. We get depressed because we didn't fulfill that life. And we fail. We face failures. Why do depressions occur when we break the promises? For example, if you have promised your grandmother, "Grandma, I will take you to Disneyland," and then she passes away. How does that feel? You couldn't fulfill the promise and you have been delaying it until she passed. And you didn't take her to Disneyland. You didn't take her to Tirupati, or you didn't take her somewhere. It remains with you. That thing remains with you. It haunts you. And that is how it depresses you. And you're not in this moment. And that is what the failure is all about. You're not in this moment. You're not able to enjoy this moment because of that sore spot. And there are many examples I can give that you can relate with. So a promise forms a special thought form in our mind and a strong expectancy within our emotional vehicle. And sometimes even the awareness of the futility of the promise does not annihilate such thought forms, and the expectancy of the lower mind brings in many rationalizations and lets us hang on to the promise. There are two minds, lower mind and higher mind. We will discuss about the mind later. Now we are focusing on the promise. So thought forms are created whenever there's a broken promise. So the expectancy part is the most important thing that we need to deal with. I say something just like that. I and Sampath meet at a party. "Oh, I will come tomorrow, or I will call you. I will call you at 10 o'clock in the morning." Then I don't call him. Then Sampath says, "Hello, you said that you'll call me at 10 o'clock. Why didn't you call?" "Oh my God, I'm sorry. I forgot." He'll be watching the time. She said she'll call me at 10 o'clock. Why didn't she call? We also do that to many people sometimes, isn't it? We just tell them that only. We don't do it. If I tell them, then only that person will shut up. Otherwise, they'll keep on going. Just to make someone shut up, just to make someone to get rid of them, just to, deal with the situation, we say something. Oh my God, that person took it seriously. I said just like that. How could that person take it so seriously? How childish of him. Who's being childish here? So great depressions and disillusionments and inertia and apathy are the result of these thought forms and the expectancy. And in such cases, the best way to help is to find the promise and the one who promised it and dissipate the promise through analytical logic, replacing it with a spiritual challenge. We can dissipate a promise. There's a path to follow that. Otherwise, you both will still stay connected until you both fulfill the promise, until expectancy goes away. You both can sit together, the promiser and the promisee, sit together and discuss about it and come to an understanding about it. And when the promisee says that it's okay now, then it's boom, finished, gone. But we don't have time for that. We don't have time for that. We can easily say something, give out a word, but we don't have the time to resolve a promise, resolve an issue, sit with that person and talk to him or her. And it is also helpful to analyze the one who made the promise and search for the motives behind the promise and the circumstances which were related to it. And that is how we sit together and dissipate the promise. We sit down. Who asked you to promise? Who the hell asked you to promise? So that is how you dissipate it. And it must be remembered that the moment of the dissolution of the promise is a moment of pain and suffering. It is not going to be easy for anyone when the dissipation is going on. For the promiser and the promisee, it is going to be a time of pain and suffering. Because that has become a sore spot in both of your minds, in your emotions, in your physicality, the electrical patterns have been disturbed. That is not going to be easy. Don't think that it's going to be a cakewalk. It is going to be full of pain and suffering depending on the seriousness of the promise that has been made. What kind of promise has been made? It depends on that aspect, how much pain and suffering it will be. But then once this is over, you will be so joyful because, oh my God, now I was free of that promise. I am free. Now I don't have to deal with my disturbances. I am free. I am joyful. All my patterns have been set right now. So what do we learn from this lesson? I need to be very careful with my words. I need to be very careful. I don't want to face this situation again in my life ever. Not in this life, not in any life. So it's very interesting to note that the promiser builds a thought form within his mental sphere. I promised something to Manusha. I build a thought form in my mind. If I fulfill the promise, it goes poof. But if I don't, we just do it lightly. No matter how lightly we are made it really, disturbs me, haunts me. It creates confusion in my mind also. Not just in the mind of the promisee, but in the promiser's mind also. It creates confusion. Because your whole wiring system is disturbed. See, how can you work in your computer if your computer is damaged? You need to repair it. And until you get it repaired, you can't function on your computer in a perfect way. So make sure that your computer is not damaged. It's not going to repair. You need to take care of your computer, service it properly. See that the earthing is done. See that the connections are good. See that the current flow is happening. See that the whole operating system is perfect. That is when a computer will work properly. That is how I am able to speak to you right now through this computer, because everything is perfect. As I said in the example, I forgot the promise I made to Manusha. Does it mean that it will go away? No, it doesn't. The thought form exists and it is registered as a defect in the mental computer. And this nobody sees the effect. Nobody even imagines that this can be the reason for my confusion in the mind. This is the invisible effect, which nobody will ever know that it is because of my broken promise that this is happening. You can see your own situations. You can go back in your life and look at the broken promises. How does it affect your mind, emotions, and your life? It's an invisible effect. You can't put a point on it. You can't connect the dots. And the thought form of a promise can be re-stimulated either in the mind of the one who promised or in the mind of the one who was promised. Re-stimulation can happen. And every time the thought form is re-stimulated, it takes away the clarity of the mind and creates minor or major disturbances in the mind. The grandmother promise. The boy. What happens to the boy's mind when the promise, the memory gets re-stimulated? How does that broken promise affect the child? Or maybe when I see Manusha the next time, she is re-stimulated with the promise that I gave to her. Oh, this woman, this lady promised me something. She didn't do it. That's the only thing that I remember about that person, isn't it? She doesn't keep her word. Don't believe her. Don't trust her. She just says something like that. Either you think that in your mind or put it out verbally to others. Spread it to others. Then I have to die explaining to everyone why I had broken that promise. And I'm so sorry that I have broken the promise. Why go through all that? Fulfilling it was easier than go through hell with it. Just go to Manusha's house for lunch. Just eat something and come back. Simple. The promise is fulfilled. Just call Sampath at 10 o'clock. Done and dusted. You fulfilled the promise. Wow. Because if I don't call Sampath at 10 o'clock, if I say to him again the next time, Sampath, I'll call you at 6 o'clock. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Then you don't even start expecting anything from me because you know that I'm not going to call you. Because of your past experience. We do not admit this, but most of us will live in the past. So in certain cases, one promises, but for a while does not carry it out. The grandmother aspect, the Disneyland example. And later he wants to meet his promise, but cannot find any opportunity to fulfill it because of many circumstances. It can be the death of the person. It can be because of the geographical reasons. It can be for health reasons. It can be for, relationships not being right or something like that. Anything can happen. But the thought form of the promise remains in his being as a sore spot until it is analyzed and dissipated. Okay. Now, me and Manusha are friends, best buddies. I promise something to her that I'll buy you a very big birthday gift on your next birthday. And suddenly something happened and both of us parted ways. We fought and we became enemies or maybe not friends anymore. What happened to that promise? Will you still buy a birthday gift with Manusha? Or no? So we need to think very, very carefully when we make a promise. If we make a promise, we need to fulfill it. No matter, even if me and Manusha are not friends, I will send her a birthday gift because I promised. That is in the past. So that is how it is important, my dear friends. When we can dissipate it, if me and Manusha sit together and analyze it and work on it and try to understand, get an equal understanding about the promise that we have made and why we are unable to fulfill it. It's a difficult situation when we talk in practical terms, but this is how it is. This is how it is. So, some people make false promises. Did you ever make a false promise? Or were you made a false promise? And in this case, they have a weak thought form of a promise in their minds. If I make a false promise, there will be a weak thought form in my mind. And this thought form gradually grows and bothers me because the one who was promised nourishes the weak thought form by the force of its expectation. My grandmother will keep expecting me to fulfill the promise that I made to her. So, it creates a weak thought form in my mind and she will give that energy to this weak thought form because of her expectation. My granddaughter promised me something and she will fulfill it. That is the thought form, that is the expectation that she has in her mind, which creates a weak thought form in my mind. And that is why promise really disturbs you, makes an impact on you. And the thought form of a false promise not only becomes a promise, but also a hated thought form within the man. I will start hating myself for not fulfilling the promise. It is not I hating myself, it becomes a hated thought form. The promise, the unfulfilled promise has become a hated thought form. You hate that thought form in your mind. And you think that I hate myself. No, it is not like that. You hate the thought form. So this is how a man's memory becomes weak and the clear thinking is not fulfilled. There's no clear thinking in this. And you don't understand why you're not able to think clearly. Why is everything so foggy? Why am I confused? Why am I in chaos? Why am I not able to make a decision? Because of an unfulfilled promise and because you have a weak thought form in your mind. As simple as that. So it is very helpful to do a review to find your promises and either dissolve them consciously or fulfill them if possible. Write down. Once this session is done, you take your own time. I'm not going to give you a deadline. I'm no one to give you a deadline. You write down the promises that you have made to others. So what I worked out on myself was I made 2 sections. Promises I have fulfilled, promises I have not fulfilled. It doesn't matter whom you promised. Even if you promised your watchman, it doesn't matter. Fulfill it. So that is how your weak thought forms are dissipated and dissolved. Sit with that person if you're still unable to fulfill that promise. Sit with that person. I'm really sorry. as we already discussed, an analytical, logical mind with a spiritual challenge, that particular promise will be dissipated. And the promise has a form element in it, and it has etheric, astral, mental elements, and willpower. Willpower. And the melting process is almost impossible. Left to itself, we need to intervene in that. We need to put some efforts in that. But through logic and analysis, it is possible to dissipate it, but we need to pay some taxes. We took a loan, but when we have to give it back, we have to pay with the interest. And that is what happens here also. And what are the taxes here? The taxes here are the etheric, astral, and mental disturbances. That is the tax that you have to pay until you fulfill the promise. And once it is dissipated through logic and analysis, your taxes are finished, you're off the account. So that is how a form element has when as far as the promise is concerned. Promising to yourself. Have you ever made a promise to yourself? Oh, from tomorrow onwards, I will get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go for a morning walk. I promise to myself. Okay, in the morning you get up. Do I have to get up? I don't. Tomorrow from tomorrow. What happened to the promise you made to yourself? Promising to oneself is also a very serious matter, and in most cases, a person promises when he is in a higher state of consciousness or is soul infused. A great master says that you need to promise, you need to make a promise when you're centered, not when you're very happy or very sad. These are two extreme situations in life that you should not utter a word from your mouth. Either you're very low or you're very high. You're very happy. Don't say anything which you can't bear it later. You're very low. Don't utter a word that you have to regret later. Only when you're centered, you're balanced, you're in equilibrium, that is when you can actually promise something, because that is going to be a very, very conscious promise. Even in your centered conscious state, think 10 times before you face it. Don't ever promise when you're either very happy or very sad. Be centered. You can see many movies. In many movies, when two people go to a bar and they drink and they make promises. In the morning, they are awake. Oh, did I make a promise? Nah. Four or five ladies come together and join in a kitty party. They gossip. And they're very happy and they promise something. Are they really going to fulfill the promise? Because they are not going to be in that happy state forever, isn't it? There are fluctuations. And irrespective of the fluctuations, if you can fulfill that promise, then only you can open your mouth. And a promise made from such a level evokes positive polarization from the lower vehicles. But when the promise is not carried out, the positive polarization changes into negative polarization. See how deep this is, how deep this science is. You don't want to put yourself in this situation. Negative polarization. And then the man on the personality level does exactly the opposite of what he promised in his inspirational or uplifted moments. So I do meditation now. I'm in a very higher state of consciousness. I am one with the universe and everything. Oh, I promise to myself from now on, I will love everyone. You open your eyes. What do you do? Somebody irritates you. Will you love that person? Somebody does something which you don't like. Will you love that person? Somebody cheated you. Will you love that person? I will be full of love and everything. I am in a very high state of consciousness. I promise myself that I will love everyone. I will treat everyone equally. The practicality happens when you open your eyes. Do you see love in everyone? No. Do I love everyone? No. Do I see everyone equally? No. Is the oneness still existing? No. It's only existing in my meditation. That is when negative polarization happens, because when you do exactly the opposite that you promised, when you're in a higher state of consciousness. Related situation also creates problems. Many people make various promises to their higher self. To their higher self, when they do not carry them out, they try to hide from the light of the higher self and keep themselves busy with lower activities. I took a loan from Sampath. I took 1 lakh rupees from Sampath. Now I'm not able to repay. So what do? I don't want to see Sampath. I will hide from Sampath. I have no money to repay him. So I will avoid Sampath wherever I go. I will hide from him. This is what happens when you don't fulfill the promises that you make to the higher self. You will try, but can you really hide from your higher self? I don't think so. You can't hide from your higher self. Even if you are hiding in a dungeon also, he will find you out. So, but promises made to the higher self can never be forgotten, because the higher self eventually creates those crises in your life which you recollect yourself and meet your promises through painful experiences. The higher self will make sure that you fulfill the promise, no matter what. In this life, they are there. In this life or the 100th life, it doesn't matter. So be very careful when you promise something to your higher self. Be very, very, very conscious. Be very practical in your promises. Be grounded. So it is also true that we promise on various levels without false eyes. I. Which eye are you promising from? And because we change our lips very often, we create conflicting promises within our nature. Which eye are you promising from? Which eye is it? I promise. Who is that I? Which I is it? We have so many layers within ourselves. We have split personality disorders within us only. And I promise. Which I are you talking about? And which I has to fulfill it? And on each level, we see things from different viewpoints. We have different interests and also different relationships. And all the factors combined force us to make various promises to ourselves and to others, which are often conflicting. And conflicts created in these ways do not contribute to our evolution, growth, etc., etc., etc. Please be very careful with your eyes. Is it a false eye or is it a true eye? It will be a false eye if you are living under different onion layers. You promise something as a true eye only when you're one with yourself. You're integrated within yourself. You're unified within yourself. That is a true I. Patriji is the same everywhere. He's not different for different people. He's integrated. He is unified within himself. And that is how we need to be. We need to be integrated within ourselves so that we become the true I. And that true I, if that promises, it will be a perfect promise. So firstly, we need to work on ourselves to take off the false eyes and become the true I, the true self, the real self, the one self that we actually are, but we have blankets on ourselves with all the false eyes and we confuse ourselves. It is all self-created, self-made traps. We can't blame anybody else for this. And expectations are not promises. So if I do not tell Manusha that I am going to lunch tomorrow to your house, and if still she expects that I will come to lunch for tomorrow, that is not my problem. She calls, I was expecting you for lunch today. Then I say, I didn't tell you that I will come to lunch today. Then why are you expecting me to come there? So don't take responsibilities for others' expectations, even though you didn't promise them something. Their expectations are their problems. As long as you did not promise to them, you're good. I didn't promise anything and Manusha is expecting something for me to do something, then that's Manusha's problem, not my problem. If I promise, that's my problem. If I don't promise, then that's her problem. So expectations are not promises. We have expectations in our relationships, in our friendships, in our working groups, in our spiritual groups. We have so many expectations. But who promised you anything? I expect my husband to love me. If he promised that that your husband has promised that he will love you, yes, perfect. But expectations are not promises, my dear friends. This is mainly relevant to your relationships. To your children, your husband, wife, parents, society, group, co-workers, friends, everywhere, all the relationships. Expectations are not promises. Please be mindful of this. If you are still having expectations, even though the other person has not promised to you, resolve it within yourself. In expectations, you form a thought form which you may obsess you gradually if you feed it with your imagination and thoughts. And generally, expectations fade away when the source of inspiration does not show the evidences of support for your expectations. Manusha will keep expecting that I will come to her for lunch. I will not show any evidence of fulfilling those expectations. So gradually, that expectation will fade away from Manusha's mind. But why wait till that long time? Why not work out your expectations right now so that you don't waste your time? So it's very beneficial to clear your mind of the thought forms of expectations because they consume a great amount of energy from your mental, emotional, and etheric nature. And they create diffusion in your mind, which makes you take unreasonable actions or attitudes. You don't want to go through all this. You don't want to go through all this. If I have any expectation for anyone, I will be drained of the thought form. Completely drained. On all levels. Fueled by my imagination. Fueled by my visualization energies. Oh, we humans are very good at imagining things. We are very good in imagining things. We love to be in the unreality of it. Vows. We come to vows. This is the last bit of this presentation. Vows. If anyone here got married, then they know what vows are all about. It doesn't matter what religion, but vows are very, very, very serious things. You know why? Because you make a promise to each other in the presence of the angels and the devas. That is why they are very serious, very, very important. Vows. These are of a higher order. So vows are of a higher order, and they not only have etheric, emotional, and mental forces and the energy of the will, but they are also associated with the devas and the higher beings. Generally, in the marriages, the Pandit reads out the mantras. Nobody wants to know what they mean. Let's just get married. With all the pomp and glory, just get married. Let's focus on other important things rather than on the vows. You put in lakhs and crores of rupees in the marriage. You want to show off something, but the vows are the most important thing. What do you promise to each other? As a husband and wife, what do you promise to each other? Those are the most important things. So the violation of vows creates serious disturbances in man's. It means that humans, okay? It's not that only the man or the woman, it's the human beings. Their subtle bodies and their relationship with subjective forces. Divorces. That is what the violation means. Divorces or separation or anything can be a violation of that vow. So it creates major disturbances. And as we go higher, our words, promises, and vows are taken more seriously because they're connected with speech and thought. And not just vows, my dear friends. When you talk about pledges or oaths, carry the equal importance. For example, the doctors, when they are just about to take up the responsibility as a doctor, they make an oath, they make a pledge that I will do service. But what do? They go after money. Service is forgotten. Lawyers, police, politicians, they make oaths and pledges. And those oaths and pledges are the foundation on which the person functions. If not, then you know what will happen. So they are connected with the energy of speech and thought, my dear friends. And on higher levels, speech and thought are agents of creative forces which bring into manifestation and objectification the things that we think and talk about. What do you manifest? What are you manifesting in your life? How are you using the speech energy and the thought energy in your life? Especially when they are done on a very high level. Just imagine the kind of impact it might have on our life, in our mind, in our emotions, in our relationships, in our relationship ourselves. Just imagine. There are situations where a couple needs to separate. That's okay, not a problem. We can work through that. So in breaking your vows, you start a destructive process within the forms and relationships which you have been building with your vows. And this destruction affects your higher and lower vehicles in many ways. When I say higher and lower vehicles, it's lower mind, lower heart, higher heart. And there's a middle mind, middle heart also, which we'll discuss later in another session. So in the lower and the higher vehicles, it creates disturbances because it's a destructive process. And you start your disturbances with your forms and relationships. And it is possible to break the vows if they were taken under pressure. For example, if you have been forced to marry that person, it can be dissipated. So, or in a state of unconscious, you're not able to understand what is happening with me. You got married. That is okay. Child marriages, for example. You're not in your right consciousness. You're not in the right senses when you're getting married. That's okay. Or if the vows interfere in your relationships with greater principles, laws, and service, you have a higher purpose. You have greater, higher principles. You need something else to do. If this is the case, the vows must be analyzed, brought into the light of your present consciousness, and cancelled. Taken under pressure, unconscious state, or interface with the relationships. It can be cancelled. Both sit together, get a deeper understanding about each other. Then you can dissipate it with your present consciousness. With the intuitional light, when I see the light of the present, it has to be the intuitional light. Intuitional light happens when the heart and mind comes together. Intuition is here, light is here. So intuitional light. So this is the last quotation that Torquem Saradaren says. We must start to practice living in the light of our soul and see things exactly as they are. Only when we can see things exactly as they are, we'll be able to use our words, our speech energy correctly. So that is all, my dear friends. That is the presentation or something that I wanted to give to you today. Please be very careful in your promises. Don't make a promise when you're happy or sad. Be centered. Be in equilibrium. Be balanced. What is done. But from now on, at least be mindful of what you're doing. As simple as that. Thank you, my dear friends.
Thank you so much, ma'am. What a subject. I'm sure everyone is relating to their own lives and underline the importance of the words and the promises. I have a question here. We didn't talk about the word karma here. Is it directly related to karma? Every word that we
utter? Of course it is karma, because see, 5 action areas are there. Intentions, thoughts, emotions, speech, and actions. All these are karma only. Anything that comes out of mouth is karma. If I say, Sampath, I hate you, I am releasing the hate energy towards you. If I say, Sampath, I love you, I am releasing love energies. It's what you give out to others. It's an energy. And whatever you give out, it will come back to you.
Maybe that's why Patriji always said, Matamita Dhyasa. Always be careful with every word that you utter. All right. I would like to give a small example of Patriji. In 2006, he gave us a date for Paima. Paima was the Young Masters Association, the Youth Association of Pyramid Spiritual Societies. We wanted to conduct a very big program, so he gave a date. And we were not so big that we could pull up such a big program. So we went back to him with a pamphlet planning the program on the same day. But he didn't expect us to take his word so seriously. But by that time, his program was already in a different place. So he has seen the pamphlet and said, yeah, on the same day, actually, though I gave the same date to someone else in some other place. I didn't know that you guys will come back with this program. Then we are like, I sat in front of him in his house in Amberpet, and I was looking at him. He looked at me, and then he called Shivappa, his personal secretary, and he said, these guys are quite serious about this program. Make sure we attend both the programs. We take out time for this and for that. And he said sorry. He didn't have to say sorry. He said, very sorry that I didn't expect you guys to come up with such a serious program. That was the biggest program of Paima then. The great thing what I saw in him was he didn't have to say sorry to me at that age. But the way he meant it when he said sorry was like it touched. And once in Delhi, there was a center opening in Delhi where he was only 5 minutes late. Only 5 minutes late. So he came and sat in the chair. The VIP and all, they already were in the center. He took one moment to sit in a chair next to me. And he said, I'm late by 5 minutes. Then I said, yes, sir. Is that okay? I said, it's okay, sir. Just now everybody is settling down. Then he said, okay, let me go. So it shows that he's quite conscious of even small promises, even like following time, but, whether the word given to a youngster or, anyone for that matter. As you said, finally, it all boils down to the state you are in, how centered you are, how much serious you are going to take your word. So thank you so much, Parinitha ma'am, for a beautiful subject.
Yeah, it was really amazing. As Sampath said, even I could relate to so many. I have a question. Many times we make promise and we forget it. So how to deal with it?
From now on, I want everyone to remember all the promises that you've made, small, big, it doesn't matter. Review it. Do a review of all the promises that you've made. And try to fulfill that promise. And if you're unable to fulfill the promise, at least you can go into meditation and say that, I'm sorry for not fulfilling the promise, or maybe if there's any chance of fulfilling it, please go and fulfill it. As simple as that. Or you can dissipate it with an understanding of each other.
The promises made by others, they remain in our subconscious mind so deeply, and they still hurt us. Right? So as you said, so how to deal with it? So how to release the pain from within?
You can release the pain, but you can't forget the promise. The promise is never forgotten. You can release them from their own prison. They have imprisoned themselves in the promise. So you can release that. If you don't want to be in that pain, if you don't want to be in the suffering, you can as well choose to release them from the pain. Or maybe sit together and talk to each other and come to a logical analysis and conclusion and sit together and discuss about.
My name is Kruta. My question is marriage is a very big relationship, and it's a big promise made each other. In that case, we are seeing divorces are very common nowadays. It might be small problem, a big problem. We don't know, but when it comes to couples, that might be a big problem. So when the couples are in so much pain, they are fighting, whatever the issues, is it breaking that marriage is a right thing, or still the couple has to continue in that pain forever with that fighting or whatever the issues they're facing every day? Because we know that we are going to break the promise, and it's not a small one. So is it a good thing? I'm really not sure.
I am no one to tell you whether to continue or to stop. I am nobody. It depends from person to person and from relationship to relationship as to how those two persons will have to deal with the situation together. And they're all on different levels, with different physical levels, different emotional levels, different mental levels, different spiritual levels. And it's all different from different people. There's no general rule that this has to happen. And I'm nobody to tell you that. I have no right to speak about this particular thing. because I do not know about that particular person. Even if I know about that particular person, I cannot judge. I'm not a person sitting here to judge you. Judging is very wrong. As Patriji said, never judge another person. So I can't judge a situation. Nobody can judge a situation. Only those two people can sit together and analyze it and see how they can work it out. And Patriji always used to say that one can never solve a problem on the level that has been created. You have to go on a higher level to solve this problem. What do you mean by going higher and solving this problem? You need to elevate your consciousness, you need to elevate your understanding, and you go through a higher state of consciousness. And when you see the problem, that is when the problem is resolved. And please read the book, the No Problem book written by Jeff Carrera. Please read that book. So try to understand this, that if a problem has been occurring between me and Manusha on this level, if we need to resolve this, we both need to go little, on a soul-infused state, on a higher level of consciousness, so that we dissipate the problem that we are having on this level. We cannot handle on this level because the perceptions, the viewpoints, the relationships are still the same. Even when we want to solve this problem, we need to go higher. And that subject is another subject which I will definitely bring to you one fine day.
I have a question now. How I can know that I'm in balance to make a promise?
Balance is made through meditation. Balance is made through right thinking and right energies. Only when you are deeply connected to your heart, then only you can bring balance. With the mind, just with the mind alone, you cannot have balance because it gives you 10 things, 100 things to think about. You cannot be balanced. Only when the heart carries your balance, when you're connected to your heart through meditation, only through meditation. That is when you get connected to your heart, and the heart will bring you balance. The heart will bring you equilibrium. The heart will make you centered. And when you connect to your heart, when the heart and mind connects with each other, that is when you will create that situation in your life where you are in balance. When you will know you are in balance, either when you are not in these two extremes, happiness or sadness. When you're not emotionally carried away to make a promise. So that is when you will know that you're in balance. When you're deeply connected with your heart, and your heart and mind works together, because heart is intuition and the mind is light. The intuitional light, when you see yourself, that is when you can utter a word from your mouth, and that is when you can see that, yes, I can practically, in my intuitional light, I can fulfill this promise.
What if a promise was made, inspire someone to create a miraculous belief system in someone, and the promise could not be kept?
Miracles can be achieved, but if you put a condition that it has to happen now, today, in this lifetime, that is when a problem occurs. A miracle can happen anytime. It's a miracle. See, we are in a time zone. There's a clock in our physical arena. But when as far as miracles are concerned, they are in a timeless arena. Physical aspect and spiritual aspects are different as far as the time is concerned. There is no time there. We have time here. But when we talk about miraculous promises, they are made on a higher level of consciousness. Miracles on a higher level of consciousness. So they can be fulfilled anytime, depending on the kind of energy that you give in, how much fuel you are giving to that energy or that thought or your intention, how much common good it is bringing to everyone. Everything will manifest depending on how much energy to you give that. But the timing of that promise to or so that intention to manifest is not in your hands. It can happen at any time. And that happens gradually as you elevate your consciousness bit by bit by bit. And when you will start loving everyone equally, depends on how much you learn every day, how much you fuel that thought every day, how much you really consciously live by that intention of the promise every day.
Thank you, Mom. So it was really wonderful session, and thank you, Sampath, for hosting the session.